What's poppin'? Today I'm going to show you guys how you can use henchmen as a playtesters, which is probably one of the coolest things you can have in your maps, or you can use them as player replacements so your maps will never be empty again, which is kind of a good thing because empty maps are boring and nobody wants to play them. So today I'm going to show you guys quickly how you can do that. First things first, we need technically only 2 devices for this entire thing, but you can obviously adjust it to your likings, and I'll show you how to adjust it. But the main thing is obviously we need the henchman device, which you can obviously find under the devices category and should be fairly up here, the guard spawner. And we also need the fairly new added player counter, which is kind of game changer and that kind of stuff, where we need to count players, where we need to have adjustments determined on how many players you have in your map. Alright, so let's start with the guard spawner first, and in here you need to change a few things. But obviously there's a lot of customizable things that depends on your game mode. So number of guards is obviously on you. If you want to have multiple people or multiple guards spawn in from the same spawner, then it's completely on you. So you change that to your likings. The team, however, is very important. Depending on which type of game mode you have, you might need to add teams or might not need to add teams. For example, if you want to use spawn pads where there's only 1 player per team, you might need to add multiple guards with multiple teams. But that is obviously depending on your game mode. The spawning time should always be to the spawning time of your players, and it should never be to none, because none means that you have to manually spawn them in, which is kind of in pain. So at the minimum, just do to 1 second. Spawning to walls is always one thing which you should have off, so do to off. Then obviously the shield and the health should be adjusted to that what your players are, so it's the closest possible. The patrol distance completely is depending on you. Drop items is also completely on you. The accuracy is definitely something you should consider and should really be careful of what you do here. I would not recommend doing anything under moderate because they are so bad at shooting. So just do anything like very high or high. Even on high and very high, they are fairly bad at shooting, so definitely have to check out for that and see. Alright, so let's come to the most important part, and it is our channels. For the channels, we need to have exactly 3 channels that we need to change. We have enable and disable on 2 custom new channels, and spawn when receiving from needs to be on the same channel as enabled. That is obviously because as soon as we want to enable the device, we also want to spawn a player in. For disable, we don't need to despawn them because there's actually an option here which is called despawn guards when disabled, which is by default on yes. So that means as soon as they get disabled, they also despawn. I don't know why there's not an option for enable there, but we have it. In the player counter, you can decide now so many things which were not possible before. So if you want to say that, for example, you want to have 2 players in your map at all times, and there's no way that you can have less than 2 players, which makes sense because 1 player needs an opponent. You can have it so the guards spawn in, and as soon as someone else spawns in, the guards disappear and you are good to go. First of all, I think the default setting here is equal to, which is we kind of need. So it needs to be at least equal to actually send a signal. You can basically also turn that around, but there's no need to, so we don't need to change some extra settings. So just leave it on equal to and then set the amount of players that you want to have at least. Compare at game start is also very important. This is to default by no. So the game will immediately start checking if there is other players on the map than just you or just you, and will send signals out. Other than that, there's only 2 channels which we need to change here, which are very important. That is when count is succeeded and when count fails. Obviously, when count is succeeded means when there are 2 players, we want to despawn the guards, and if the count fails, then we want to spawn the guards. And as you might have guessed, we set the same channels that we did in our guard spawner, so that means when count succeeds means that we want the guard to despawn, so that is channel 1 for us, so disable the guard, and channel 2 is for enabling and spawning the guard. And that is all you have to do. Now you can see that as soon as a player spawns in, the guard gets disabled and despawns, and as soon as the player leaves or leaves the match, the guard spawns back into the game. But as we all know, Fortnite Creative does not only have one solution, and there's a lot of other solutions on how you can create the same system here. And maybe in the future this device is broken for whatever reason. So you could also use the other option where you have the player spawn pad here. You can basically do the same thing here. When players spawned, which means basically a player has now spawned into the game, we can disable the guard. So all you have to do is here basically put in channel 1 when a player spawned. But we don't have anything when a player gets out of the map. Thankfully, there's another device which can do that, and which is called the Mutation Zone. This is the device that people used before the player counter to kind of create a ranking system, placement points, stuff like that. And in this device, there is an option when a player leaves or enters the zone. So you can basically use the same things as you did before here. So if a player enters the zone, you obviously want the guards to be disabled. And if a player exits the zone, you want the guards to be enabled. It's very simple. It is not as easy to set up for multiple players. And if there's like multiple teams, I think that is where the player counter really shines here. But obviously, this is a solution which you can use if for whatever reason the player counter is not an option for you. And that's a quick wrap on how you can create player replacements in your maps so you will never have empty maps again, which I think personally is one of the coolest things that you can now do with the henchmen or guard spawners. And definitely is a level up to anybody that has a low amount of players in the map but still want the maps to be kind of fun and enjoyable for everybody. Definitely let me know what you want to see next, and I will see you guys back in the next one.